It was past midnight in Shanghai. The city's neon glow shimmered against a restless sky, and the streets pulsed with the chaotic rhythm of motorbikes weaving between endless streams of cars. The air was thick with the smell of roasted chestnuts from late-night vendors, mingled with the faint metallic tang of rain that had fallen earlier. My heart hammered as I leaned forward in the back seat of a taxi, urging the driver to move faster. There was only one name echoing in my mind, only one purpose propelling me through the sprawling labyrinth of the city. Shen Yue. The urgency of the moment was indescribable. It was not just a journey. It was a race against time, one that demanded speed, secrecy, and unshakable resolve. My palms were damp, not from the heat of the night, but from the magnitude of what was at stake. What could be so urgent that it required a clandestine dash through one of the largest cities on Earth at an hour when most of the world slept? That answer was waiting for me, and I had no choice but to find it. The taxi weaved through the glittering veins of Shanghai like a needle stitching through darkness. Towers of steel and glass loomed above, their facades glowing with colors that seemed alive. Red, blue, and green advertisements flickered across screens the size of entire buildings, casting shadows that danced across wet pavements. My pulse quickened with every turn, every red light, every delay. Each second felt like an eternity, each block like a test of endurance. This was no ordinary night. It was a secret I had carried quietly for weeks, one that could not be explained in a single sentence or dismissed as a whim. This was about Shen Yue, and the pull she had on my path was undeniable. I remember stepping out of the taxi with the city pressing down on me like a weight. The sound of horns blaring and engines revving was relentless, yet there was a strange silence within me, a tunnel vision so sharp that I could see nothing beyond the glowing destination ahead. My shoes struck against the pavement in rapid rhythm, echoing in alleyways that smelled faintly of spice and smoke. I cut through side streets where lanterns swayed gently above, their orange glow painting the air in warm streaks. I pushed past crowds gathered around street performers, past couples laughing softly as they strolled beneath towering skyscrapers, past shadows that stretched unnaturally long under the fluorescent glow of the city. Every corner I turned felt like stepping into another world. In one street, the laughter of karaoke bars spilled out, clashing with the thunderous bass of nightclubs. In another, silence ruled, broken only by the occasional shuffle of a stray cat darting into darkness. Shanghai was alive, yet it felt like it was watching me, urging me to move faster, warning me that time was slipping. My phone buzzed in my pocket with a message that made my pulse spike even higher. The words were brief, almost cryptic, but enough to send me sprinting. I knew then that I was not just chasing a person. I was chasing the unraveling of a story that had been quietly building beneath the surface. By the time I reached the Bund, the famous riverfront was glowing like a jewel. The skyline towered across the water, each building a monument to ambition and brilliance. The reflections in the river shimmered like liquid fire, and I realized that this chase was far greater than myself. The city was alive with secrets, and one of them belonged to Shen Yue. I ran past the crowds that lingered along the railings, their cameras raised toward the skyline, oblivious to the storm that raged within me. My breath came in short bursts, my chest burning with the weight of the sprint, but I refused to slow down. Every step brought me closer, every heartbeat louder than the last. I reached a quiet alley lit only by a flickering lamp. The air was still, heavy with expectation. My footsteps echoed against damp walls, and in that silence, the gravity of the journey struck me. This was not a story about a city. It was not even just a story about a chase. This was about the fragile threads of fate that drew two paths together under the midnight sky of Shanghai. And in that moment, standing alone in the shadows, I knew one thing for certain. Whatever I found at the end of this midnight dash would change everything. Because sometimes the greatest adventures are not chosen. They call to you, in the dead of night, in a city that never sleeps, with only a name in your mind and a fire in your chest. And when they do, you cannot turn away. The night was growing heavier. Shanghai's skyline pulsed like a living heartbeat, but Dylan's path had shifted from the wide, glowing boulevards into something far darker. The taxi had brought him close, but the final stretch was something no driver could guide him through. He was on foot now, the sound of his hurried steps echoing against brick walls slick with mist. Every alley felt like a choice. To the left, a narrow passage lit only by a flickering red lantern. To the right, the faint glow of a street market still alive despite the hour, voices carrying like whispers in the dark. Ahead, shadows stretched long and uncertain. The city seemed determined to test him, as though Shanghai itself wanted to know how far he was willing to go for Shen Yue. He pulled his jacket tighter, not against the chill but against the tension that was crawling up his spine. Somewhere in this maze of streets and glowing signs was the answer. Somewhere, Shen Yue was waiting. Suddenly, his phone buzzed again. A single message. No name attached. No punctuation. Only 3 words. "You're too late." The words made his pulse pound even harder. Too late for what? Too late for who? He had no time to wonder. His legs carried him forward, faster now, past noodle stalls where steam curled into the night, past shuttered shops covered in murals and graffiti, past the gaze of strangers who seemed to know something he did not. At the far end of the alley, a door stood ajar. The faint hum of music spilled out, almost drowned by the noise of the streets. Dylan hesitated, every instinct telling him that what lay beyond that doorway was not ordinary. He pushed it open. Inside was another world. The room was dim, lit by a few hanging bulbs that swayed slightly as though disturbed by some unseen breeze. The air smelled of incense and damp wood. On the far wall, a mural of Shanghai's skyline stretched out, painted in bold strokes of black and gold. Beneath it, a table. And on the table, a small folded note. Dylan's fingers shook as he reached for it. The paper was crisp, untouched by time, as though it had been placed there moments before his arrival. He unfolded it slowly. The note contained only a single line. "Meet me where the city meets the river. The Bund." His chest tightened. It was the very place he had passed earlier, the glittering crown of Shanghai along the river, the beating heart of the city at night. If this message was real, if Shen Yue truly was waiting there, then every second mattered. Without a second thought, he bolted back into the night, weaving through the crowds, each step pushing him closer to the water's edge. His heart was no longer just racing. It was screaming. Because now the dash was no longer about finding her. It was about answering the question that haunted him since this chase began. Why was Shen Yue the only name that mattered tonight? The river was alive. Waves shimmered with neon fire as the skyline towered like a crown of glass and steel on the opposite bank. Tourists lined the railings, their voices floating through the night like fragments of laughter and wonder, cameras flashing as if trying to trap the very soul of Shanghai in their lenses. But Dylan had no time to marvel. His eyes scanned the crowds, desperate, searching for the one figure that had pulled him through the city's endless maze. Shen Yue. Every face blurred together. Couples posed against the skyline. Families walked slowly, enjoying the humid breeze. Street musicians played quiet melodies on traditional instruments, their notes drifting like smoke over the water. But she was not there. Not yet. Dylan checked his phone again. The message glared back at him. "Meet me where the city meets the river." He was here. He had done everything right. So where was she? A sudden chill crawled over him. For the first time, he felt watched. It was not the gaze of curious strangers or the flashing cameras. This was sharper. Intentional. His instincts screamed that he was no longer just chasing. He was being drawn in. From the corner of his eye, he noticed movement not among the tourists, but in the shadows just beyond the main walkway, where the lights of the Bund dimmed and the noise of the crowd thinned into silence. A narrow stone stairway led down closer to the water, half hidden, nearly invisible to anyone not looking. He hesitated only a moment before descending. The air grew cooler, damp, carrying the smell of the river. Down here, the city above felt distant, muffled, as though he had stepped into another layer of Shanghai, one meant only for those who knew it existed. At the bottom, the stone path stretched along the water's edge. It was silent except for the lap of waves against the embankment. And then he saw it. A figure. Standing perfectly still, facing the river. The faint glow of the skyline reflected against the outline of long hair drifting gently in the breeze. "Shen Yue," Dylan whispered, his voice breaking the silence. The figure did not move. He took a step closer, heart slamming against his ribs. Another step. The sound of his own footsteps seemed deafening. Finally, the figure turned. But it was not her. The face that met his gaze was unfamiliar, eyes sharp, almost too sharp, watching him with an unsettling calm. In her hand, she held another note. Without a word, she extended it toward him. Dylan froze, every instinct screaming to run, yet something deeper urging him forward. He took the note. His hands trembled as he unfolded it beneath the glow of the city above. The words were simple, yet they felt heavy enough to shake the ground beneath him. If you truly want to find Shen Yue, stop searching. She will find you. Dylan's breath caught in his throat. He looked up, ready to demand answers, but the figure was gone. The path was empty, silent except for the restless waves. The Bund still sparkled above, alive with light and laughter, but for Dylan, the night had changed. He was no longer in control of the chase. The city had swallowed him whole. And somewhere in the shadows of Shanghai, Shen Yue was waiting.